of unicorn startups. They started as little startups and turned into unicorns, as well as a number of enterprise clients. I'm so obsessed with the topic of how to build a unicorn, which is a company with over $1 billion valuation, that I wrote a book called From Startup to Grown Up, and also have a podcast also called From Startup to Grown Up. But a little known secret about me is that prior to being a coach in the startup world, I was an executive in the startup world. I was the CFO of one startup and the head of strategy of another startup. And let's just say I learned a lot about what not to do in those experiences. So the secrets of unsuccessful unicorns. However, today I'm going to give you some secrets and tools and tips for you all to build your own consequential company. The company of your dreams that has an impact. Now I'm going to start with the bad news. I'm kind of a bad news first kind of girl. It's really, really hard to build a unicorn. Let's face it, most startups fail. And the ones that succeed, 0.1%, get to that mythical unicorn billion-dollar valuation status. So it is a difficult thing you've set yourself off to do. But I'm going to hopefully give you a couple of secrets and tools to direct you and guide you as you go in that direction. So the first thought for you happens before you start. So what I think a lot about is the iconic image of these two startup founders. You have Steve Jobs, who started his startup, Apple Computer, maybe you've heard of it, at age 23. Or Mark Zuckerberg, who started his company, Facebook, now Meta, at age 19. We see them in their iconic black turtleneck and hoodie, and everyone thinks, oh, that's what a startup founder looks like. That's what a unicorn founder looks like. Not true. It turns out that you have a lot more time than that. That 50% of startup founders who founded unicorns turned out to be 35 years or older, so over the age of 35. So I want to give you the good news. A lot of you in this room, you have much more time than you think. In addition, they have 10 years of work experience. Not only that, but we think like, oh, the iconic billionaire, billion-dollar unicorn startup founder didn't graduate from college. It's like a badge of honor to have dropped out of college. Actually, most of them graduated from a pretty good school. And so I want to invite you to recognize that you have time and that actually getting an education and diverse work experiences gives you the most likelihood of building a unicorn. And finally, 60% are repeat founders. So what that means is they started a venture and it failed, or they started a venture and they had a pretty small outcome. In fact, I'll give you an example. Stripe, one well-known unicorn startup, actually, the Collison brothers started a different startup originally. They started Automatic, which was a tool that was used for large eBay vendors to track their traffic and their inventory. They sold it for $5 million to a Canadian company, and they used the insights from that experience to build Stripe. So I want to invite you to realize that all the different things you're doing right now are helping you build your unicorn startup. Now, should you start first with the idea or the team? It doesn't matter. But when you do start, what does matter is culture. Culture is something that, I think has the most opportunity for misinformation and platitudes that I've ever experienced. When I talk about culture, typically in an audience like this, people say, yeah, we like each other, or yeah, we're all nice to each other. That is not culture, right? That is just rapport and relationship building. An essential part of working together, but not really the elements that are going to help you build your unicorn. So I want to talk about two examples of culture from two unicorn companies. One is Amazon. I'm sure you've all heard of them. The second is SendGrid. SendGrid was sold for $3 billion to Twilio in 2018. Both of them had very opinionated and distinctive cultures. So Amazon, as a lot of you know, has this obsession with customers, has a focus on long-term, operational rigor. And that has helped them be super successful in finding the right people and galvanizing them around the right set of values. It really showcases to people how they want you to act around here. That's the Amazon culture. A very different culture is the SendGrid culture. The 4 H's: honest, happy, humble, and hungry. And I talked to the CEO of SendGrid, Samir Delkola, and he told me that these 4 H's are a daily part of the way they reward people and celebrate people. And these may sound like, oh, nice kind of words, but when we further talked about it, we talked about honest. He said, SendGrid people tell it like it is. They're super direct. Or humble. That really means ability to take in feedback and learn from the different things around you. Or hungry. That means work ethic over and over again. So I want to invite you to realize that having an opinionated culture is what's going to distinguish yourself, and that also it's going to help you ultimately win. Now, if you don't focus on culture, I am sorry to tell you that what you're definitely going to have is what I call unintended toxic culture, not what you're looking for. So what that means is that if you don't focus on making sure that you have the right culture, the wrong culture is probably going to spring up around you. What that looks like is when people in your company are super polite. Everyone is too nice to say what's really going on with each other. What does that do? That means that everyone's going to work the back channel and no one's going to say directly to each other what's really going on. Or as a founder, what you often do is hire your friends. There's nothing wrong with that. However, what happens is your friends go into the workplace and no one wants to tell you that your friends are not quite cutting it, and so you ultimately have these difficult performers around and no one is telling you. One of my clients who turned out to be a unicorn, but early days when I started working with her, Linda is her name, and she had a habit of analysis paralysis. Can you relate? Needing more information and more information and more information before she would make a decision. Well, we then looked at her entire company and we saw that everybody was waiting for more information and more information before they would make a decision. And so ultimately, the company ground to a halt because she wasn't able to make a decision, and then people around her were not able to make decisions. So she did 2 things, both of which were super important. She pushed herself to start making decisions more quickly. And she also rewarded people for making quick decisions even when they were wrong, and gave them lots of shout outs and praise. And that helped her transform the culture into a culture which was going to work for them, which was more productive and fast moving. So I want to invite you to think about how you're building your own culture inside of your future unicorn. I will share with you, I have a free resource on my website if you want to go there, alisacohn.com/culture, to help you have a step-by-step guide to build your own culture, a good culture, not an unintended toxic culture. Once you have your culture in place, it's not parallel, but as you're building your culture, you're thinking a lot about who you are hiring and firing. If you want to build a unicorn, let me tell you what's important: speed, accuracy. So let me tell you what not to do. When you hire candidates, do not ask them these generic questions about what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. That gives you generic answers. You need to think about rigorously, what is the role I'm looking for? What are the qualities that I'm looking for in that role that will help me know that this person can do the job? And how am I going to ask and find out about those qualities? You have to gather evidence that the people that you're dealing with that you're hiring are able to do the job that you specifically have done the hard work of carving out for yourself. So here are some good, or I should say, when you ask for specifics, and one thing I want to say is that people fall in love with someone's resume. Oh, they worked at Google. Oh, they worked at LinkedIn, or whatever. Now, did they really do the work at LinkedIn? Did they really do the work at Google? Or did they have a team around them that did that work, and they get to put that great company on their resume? So resist falling in love with people's resumes and do the work of gathering evidence. Here are some good hiring questions for you to ponder as you think about how to interview good candidates. The most important part of these questions is that if you are doing a good job of really getting to the heart of the matter, you should be able to see through their eyes what they did. What did you learn, right? What was that like when your playbook didn't work? The kinds of questions you're asking get you to the heart of the matter of the work they did. Once you come to conviction that they're the right person, then you have to sell. And the trick of being a unicorn, I'm coming back to this, is about speed. You have to be able to sell the vision to the right people and get them on quickly so that they can help you scale. So for example, one of my unicorn clients, they were doing pretty well, but I would say it was a fairly linear progression. And then as they realized they needed to invest more in marketing, they were able to nab the former CMO of a very high-profile, large public company, and they brought him on board. That gave them both the tools, the actual know-how, as well as the strategic insights, as well as the market signal to everybody else that this was a company on the move. And it was definitely a pivotal moment in their trajectory in becoming a unicorn. So you've got to be able to sell the vision. Now, as you gain more people and as you build a consequential company, I'm sorry to tell you, you are definitely going to have to deal with firing people. The truth is that your initial founding team is most likely not going to be the ones who are going to be able to bring you all the way to the end. And so then you sort of think about it's really difficult to fire people because you like them. I understand that. And also because you're loyal to them. I understand that. And you want to part ways amicably. But at the same time, you have to realize that there are times that people are not improving, that they are overwhelmed and not able to manage the new environment, and that they are not meeting their goals. And that certainly they have lost the followership of their team. When you see that, the time becomes clear that they are no longer the right fit for that role, and you have to have an honest conversation with them. Now, when I discuss this with my startup founders, they often say, yeah, but how do I know? And then also, how do I say it? The acid test question you should always ask yourself is, have I been clear with them before you have the conversation where you have to part ways? And when I typically ask my startup founders, well, have you been clear? The most common answer is like this with their hand, like sort of. What that means is no, they have not been clear. So you want to just ask yourself the question, have I been clear? And be able to answer honestly, that you've been clear with them, that you've given them chances, that you've laid out what you need them to do in order to be successful, and given them the opportunity to rise to the occasion. So another important relationship, maybe the most important business relationship, is your co-founder. Now, what I say in my book, From Startup to Grown Up, is when you have a co-founder, you have a marriage. It's a good marriage or it's a bad marriage. But ultimately, you are going to spend more time with your co-founder, with your business partner, than you are with your life partner. That's just the truth. So you need to make sure that this is the right relationship. Now, I'll give you some data about this. From the point of view of unicorns, the sweet spot of co-founders is 2 to 3. If you can have 2 to 3 co-founders, that is kind of a good number of people to think about in bringing on as co-founders. At the same time, research shows that 60% of startup failure is due to co-founder conflict. So it's pretty important that you work out things in advance and throughout the life cycle of your relationship so that you do not fall subject to and do not fall to co-founder conflict. So the way to do that is a tool that I've called the co-founder prenup. So just like a marriage, you have a prenup with your co-founder. And what that means is you talk through all the things in advance that you might come up. What is our vision for the business? How do we both handle conflict? I have a very different model from handling conflict that you do, so it's going to look difficult, right? It's going to look different for each of us. And what are our values, and how do we know we're going to be building the same thing together? So for example, in one of my non-unicorn startups, I was coaching 2 co-founders. And one of them was really focused on, remember the old days when we had 50 people and we knew everyone's name, and it was such a great time in those days. The other co-founder, the CEO, was very focused on more growth, bigger, more product, and more people. you can imagine that that was a tension for the two of them. It was like one co-founder had his foot on the accelerator and one co-founder had his foot on the brake. That was not a recipe for success, and they ultimately broke up, and the company didn't really recover from their really different visions in this company. So I want to invite you to get on the same page. I'll give you a different example for one of my clients who is a unicorn, where I initially met them when they were just 30 people in like a WeWork. And I said, so have you talked through what will happen if you get an offer to sell the company? And the CEO immediately turned to his co-founder and said, do you want to sell? And he said, no, never. And that was it. And it was just a little moment that showed me that they had talked about their vision, they had talked about their goals, and that they were on the same page. Now, if you want to take a look at your own co-founder prenup, feel free to go to my website. So it's a free resource, a free tool, alisacohn.com/prenup. You can download your own prenup. Now, the last secret I want to share with you, sad but true, buckle up. This is a very, very difficult journey. It's 7 years of hard work, it's 12 years of hard work, it's 15 years of hard work, and there are massive ups and downs. Every startup founder I've ever talked to, ever coached, everyone who's come on my podcast has said, I knew there'd be ups and downs, but I did not realize that there would be ups and downs in the span of like 10 minutes. And that's so true, because you land the venture funding and that's great, but you realize there's a massive problem in the product. You lose an employee that you can't lose, but you gain this great new customer. So it's an intense, extreme work environment filled with ups and downs. Not only that, but founders as a group are 30% more likely than their counterparts to experience depression, anxiety, and those kinds of maladies. So I would just say to you, one of the most important things you can do for this journey of building your unicorn is to manage your psychology. Surround yourself with people who you can let your hair down with. Make sure that you manage your nutrition and your exercise and your sleep, and find ways to de-stress so that you can deal with the ups and downs. So here are a number of free resources that you can use to help you build your own unicorn, and I look forward to hearing how it goes. You can also join me at a book signing right over there in the Ignite Lounge. I'll be giving away a few copies of my book to a few lucky people and signing them, and also answering questions one-on-one. So I want to leave you with one of my favorite quotes. Successful people do what unsuccessful people don't feel like doing. So I invite you to do hard things and go build a consequential company. Thank you.
Thanks, Alisa. Alisa, we actually had a couple of quick questions there if you have a minute before you go signing. They're actually, I might combine a couple of them into one, because a lot of people are very interested in particular, how do you influence culture when joining a company, and then how do you maintain that culture when you're going through massive scaling? So it's kind of a bunch of stuff there in one.
What was the first part? How do you
if you join
a startup,
can you influence the culture?
Thank you. That's a great question. So culture, we could talk forever about culture. The first thing I would say is, if you want to influence culture as somebody who joins a startup, first identify what the culture is. So you can do that by asking people, what's the culture around here? And if they give you the same answer, you know that's the culture. And if they give you, I don't really know, then you know there's not much of a culture. And that's good, because then you can start having conversations about how should we sort of deal with each other? What should our expectations be about how quickly we respond to emails? What should our expectations be about how we communicate and say difficult things to each other? And then you can start modeling that, but discussing it is like a very helpful sort of starting point to get a lay of the land. What was the second part of that question?
If the company then is going through massive scaling,
So massive scaling, you need to find ways to enhance the culture. You need to be able to expand the culture. And the way to think about that is to make sure that you have a lot of culture carriers. There are some elements that are not optional. I go back to Amazon. Not optional is customer obsession. Now, you want to have people embedded into your culture who are focused on customer obsession all day, every day. But you can have regular conversations and dialogues and intentional discussions about what that looks like for your department or for that department and how those all get knit together. And that's the way to think about continuing to augment and expand your culture even as the company gets bigger, but to keep the core principles embedded.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Alisa.